Support Wrestle Talk!
Click the thumbs up.
Survivor Series 2018 is just around the corner and will play host to many amazing battles. Raw versus SmackDown, champion versus champion. Us versus WWE runtimes. Who will come out on top? Raw. It's going to be Raw. And if 2017 is anything to go by, Triple H on his own, despite the surgery. But with a week to go, and most likely because Crown Jewel was such a burning, stinking trash fire that we've not really had any time to talk about anything else, so much of Survivor Series actually seems like it's completely up in the air right now. But like Survivor themselves say, I've got the eye of the tiger and it can see into the future, or has read enough internet articles to have a jolly good stab at some of the things that might actually happen. So with that said, I'm El Fakador Laurie Blake, and here are 11 rumours for Survivor Series. Number 11, Team Raw's final members. With 1 week to go to the show, the Raw men's team for Survivor Series is looking a little thin. It currently stands at Dalton, Meat Castle, Braun Strowman, Ziggy Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre, who deserves to be named properly because he's pretty damn good. So, you got to imagine that the final two members of the team will be named on this week's episode of Raw. One rumour that is floating around there in the ether is that Finn Balor and Bobby Lashley will be the two taking those vacant spots. Regular viewers of Raw will know that these two have been engaged in a bitter and increasingly boring feud in which Bobby points like that and Finn points like that. Weird. It's a weird point that he does like that. Given that WWE booking currently has the two facing off against each other every week, no doubt they'll compete again this very week for the prize of, well, absolutely nothing. So you've got to imagine that there'll be some creative thinking being used to get them both on the team. Or of course Constable Corbin can just come out and say, you're both in because today I'm wearing a waistcoat and whatever the waistcoat says goes. More interestingly, another name floating around is Kurt Angle, who, despite losing to Drew McIntyre last week, showed some real spirit in the loss and therefore maybe looking for a chance to prove himself. Either that or he just wants to be on a team without Triple H for once. Number 10, The Undertaker will appear. The last time we saw The Undertaker, he was teaming with his definitely 100% real biological brother and the mayor of Knox County, Kane, in a losing effort at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia. It was widely speculated that this match would then lead to some kind of match between Taker and Shawn Michaels, more than likely at Survivor Series. But considering that Shawn has said that he was only really sticking around if the return went well, and it didn't, and he then said to cameras after Crown Jewel that he wanted to go back to his regular life, it kind of seems unlikely that this is magically happening now. So with Shawn potentially outie, it looks like Taker may be taking the stage alone. He's scheduled to be doing an autograph signing the day before Survivor Series, which has naturally led many people to believe that he will be taking part in the show in some capacity, because you don't really drag the dead man out of his crypt just to sign autographs. He'll also leave to see Post Malone. So maybe Taker will make an appearance at Survivor Series and call out Shawn Michaels, who probably just going to ignore that one. Number 9, Ronda Rousey, favourite to win. While the men have been messing things up of late, the women's roster on WWE is actually going from strength to strength. So it's no wonder some people are saying that the Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey versus SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch could well be the match of the night come Survivor Series, as the baddest woman on the planet takes on the man herself. As both women are being treated like the biggest effing deal on their respective brands, it's kind of hard to pick a winner for this match, although we all know it should just be Becky. The betting sites reckon they got a better insight though. They've consulted the runes, tipped a load of bones out of a Toby jug or whatever they do, to come up with Ronda as the current favourite to win the match. She's got odds of 1-6 on her winning, while Becky is 7-2, which, despite being bigger numbers, I'm told is not better. To put that in money numbers for you, if you were to put £1 on Ronda to win, you would get £1.17 back if she did win, whereas a quid on Becky will net you £4.50, which to me seems like it's worth a pump because that's like a week's wages here at Wrestle Talk. Number 8, Brock to win. Again. Yay! We've just seen him at Crown Jewel and about 2 weeks later, he's at Survivor Series. Bugger me, Lesnar's working hard. He probably needs a holiday. And in a decision sure to please a lot of fans, none of the fans, it looks like the Beast is going to best the Phenomenal One again, as the two face off in a Control-C, Control-V of last year's Survivor Series match. Thankfully, their match last year was actually pretty decent, with Brock showing an uncharacteristic amount of effort in his face-off against AJ. Genuinely, for the first time in like 10 years or so that Brock had actually done more than chuck someone around. Suplex City has actually turned into a cul-de-sac at this point. Hopefully this year's effort at Survivor Series will be a similar deal, but perhaps more similar than initially thought, as the odds on Brock winning place him as favourite yet again. You'll get odds of 8-13 on a Brock victory and 6-5 for AJ to win. Three-time champ Brock is probably the biggest draw in the company, at least in WWE's eyes, now that Roman is gone, so it's not exactly difficult to work out why the bookies are finding it hard to make AJ the favourite, despite the fact that he came up short last year, so he's probably due a win. Number 7. Brock might actually lose. Actually, here's the other side of the coin from wrestling's very own Lord Varys, Dave Meltzer, whose little birds have been telling him that WWE may do a Lesnar versus Guerrero storyline in the Brock versus AJ showdown. Dave is obviously referring to No Way Out 2004, where Guerrero famously defeated Lesnar to capture the WWE Championship thanks to an assist from Bill Goldberg. And I mean, we've already done the Bill Goldberg thing in the last 2 years. WWE played a hit. More than likely playing the Bill Goldberg role in this story would be Braun Strowman, or one of the other stars being groomed for the top spot, so Drew McIntyre or Seth Rollins, who we're assuming will come out to ringside and cost Lesnar the match, thus setting up a future feud for the Universal Championship that could be on the line at Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, or whenever the hell Lesnar decides to show up for work again. To me, this feels like a more logical and arguably preferable option than just having Brock win clean yet again. But clean he will win. You mark my words. Number 6. The Miz to turn face? Big fat massive question mark. A face Miz sounds completely bonkers, because we all know that Mike the Miz, Mizanin, the Mizard of Oz, Mizarella, will always be the best as a heel. But you also can't tell me that if we were to go back to Crown Jewel, you wouldn't be rooting for the little guy to recover from injury and compete in the WWE World Cup final, just to save us from Shane McMahon. And at that event, as The Miz was laid up injured, he said, "I've never been injured," and begged, saying, "I can compete," which feels like a face move to me. So could this be the start of a baby face turn? I mean, a lot of The Miz's promos, although self-indulgent, often have a basis in truth. So what if he starts cutting out the arrogance and focuses on the truth even more? He could start a new show. Never mind Miz TV. What about Truth TV? Dance break. I'm not dancing. I refuse. I'm not dancing. Who am I? Keith Apicary? I'm not dancing. Ollie's gonna hate that. And with both Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon going through character changes too, could we see The Miz going, I don't know, the other way to balance the scales? Speaking of which, number 5, Daniel Bryan to turn heel. Daniel Bryan is probably the best pure babyface that WWE has ever accidentally created, birthed as he was by a series of terrible decisions, which sounds a lot like how I was birthed. So yeah, putting aside my conception story, D-Bry has been a hot-face character since his miraculous return to the ring earlier this year, but that could all be about to change. The end of this week's SmackDown saw Bryan attack not only Samoa Joe, but also The Miz and Shane McMahon before storming up the ramp looking proper grumpy. Bryan is obviously no stranger to being a heel in WWE, as the predecessor to the Yes gimmick was, of course, the literal opposite, the No gimmick. And it could be argued that Bryan has once again been mishandled and badly booked since his return. I mean, that tag match with the Wives being a particular low light, so a heel turn here could be a nice way of spicing things up for him. But it would be good if they could make this one a slow turn rather than just a sudden flip-flop like with Becky, and hopefully we don't have to have Bryan coming out and saying, "Oh, you fans never cheered for me, you were never behind me," all the while everyone in the background's going, "Yes, yes, yes," and waving their arms about, because frankly that stuff is hard to edit out. So maybe at Survivor Series, Bryan's temper gets the better of him and he costs his team the win, thus beginning the slow spiral into the pits of despair. Number 4, a Shane McMahon-Daniel Bryan feud to begin. According to Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live, the plan for WrestleMania appears to be a match between SmackDown Commissioner and literal best in the world Shane McMahon and former SmackDown GM Daniel Bryan. It appears as though the two were starting a feud around this time last year, but that plan was obviously dropped when Bryan was cleared to return to the ring, so instead, the pair teamed up to take on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and because Shane is the best in the world, nothing has happened with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn since. Based on what happened on SmackDown just gone, with Bryan going berserk and attacking everyone, coupled with Shane's clearly heelish win at Crown Jewel, it would appear that the long-rumoured Shane vs Bryan match is in the works, possibly for WrestleMania. Super cool. And we're both having places on the SmackDown men's team at Survivor Series, and Bryan's obvious disdain for Shane because of the Crown Jewel World Cup win. You gotta imagine that the tensions are gonna boil over. So, kind of counter to the previous rumour, we could see Shane going full heel rather than Bryan turning at all, and then we get another Daniel Bryan versus a heel McMahon in an authority figure storyline, which admittedly is how Bryan got over, but also not good in any way, shape or form. Number 3, the Riot Squad to cost Team Raw. Hide your mustard, glue down your mops, wear contacts today because the Riot Squad are in town for Survivor Series. This trio of absolute effing anarchists are rumoured to be so out of control that they might cost the Raw women's team the match at the pay-per-view. Not entirely sure how they're supposed to do that, but you can imagine that they'll just be kicking over bins backstage or hiding sandwiches and just miss the match entirely, or blatantly cheat and get disqualified. Then, instead of being pushed as the next big thing on Raw, you can just have them squashed by every imaginable trio of randos until nobody cares about the riots anymore. Oh. People already don't care, do they? Number 2, Tamina and Nia to be a factor. While that rowdy Rhombus Rousey may be a strong favourite to win her champion versus champion match against Becky Lynch, the recent heel union of Nia Jax and Tamina could play a factor in the outcome of that match, according to some. Excitingly, or not as the case may be, is definitely 100%, Nia won the Battle Royal at Evolution to guarantee herself a future title match with Rousey, which everyone's expecting to take place at TLC. So, with that in mind, Nia may round up Tamina and pop on down to the ring and get involved in the finish of Becky Ronda, more than likely helping Becky to deal Ronda her first defeat on the roster, or at least causing a DQ so both women are protected. A straight-up win, though, would help Becky reaffirm her position as the man on SmackDown, and it would add some heat to the Ronda-Nia run back by establishing Jax and Tamina as a viable threat to Ronda, so therefore preferable. More preferable, Nia doesn't get involved and Becky just wins. Number 1, the other teams. Spymaster General Dave Meltzer has also reported in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter that while Lashley and Balor are favourites for the final 2 spaces in the Raw men's team because they have nothing else to do whatsoever, there could also be some stiff competition in the form of Elias and Dean Ambrose. Elias, who also has nothing to do whatsoever. Dave also believed that Sasha Banks, Bayley and Ember Moon could be shoo-ins for the women's team, as could Nia Jax if she's not too busy hanging out with Tamina. Meanwhile, Mickie James and Alicia Fox may also get a call-up because of their close links with Captain Alexa Bliss. In terms of the tag team elimination match, there are only really a few tag teams to choose from, so on the Raw side, out of the 6 tag teams on the show, 5 of them are going to have to be picked, which is well awkward for the one that gets left out. Sorry Ascension, there is no need for comedy goths today, I bid you farewell. For SmackDown, it's a pretty simple decision too, as there's only really Sanity and Gallows and Anderson who can be chosen, unless of course you want to count the Colons. Nobody counts the Colons. You will get in trouble. So really the big takeaway from all those rumours is that the teams in all of the matches are just going to be a bunch of dudes and dudettes thrown together because wrestling. The WWE title has had some, shall we say, interesting championship reigns in the past, but what are the most bizarre? Click the video on screen now to find out and give us a subscribe to stay up to date on all of the latest wrestling news. I've been El Fakador, and that was Lucha.